Dracula AD 1972 is another reboot. It starts over again and marks the return of Peter Cushing to the series as Van Helsing. It begins right away with Van Helsing and Dracula fighting each other. It doesn't bullshit around, it gives you exactly what you want to see from the very start. Dracula's impaled on the wheel of a coach, crumbles away to dust, then some random person comes in and collects the dust in a vial. Can't say that's never happened before. Then the credits begin, and what? An airplane? Funk music? Cranes? Cars? That's right, we're now in the present time. Like the title says, it's 1972. Next thing, we're watching people singing and dancing, and it goes on, and on, and on. A bunch of hippies get together to partake in the traditional resurrection of Dracula. Haven't we seen this before? An evil ceremony led by a crazed lunatic who cuts his hand and bleeds into a goblet. It's the same exact thing that happened in Taste the Blood of Dracula, but done much poorer. And of course, this guy becomes Dracula's servant. I like how Dracula doesn't even thank him for bringing him back.
I summoned you! It was my will.
In other words, I'm Dracula, bitch. Even though the film takes place in the present-day 70s in which it was made, it doesn't forget its gothic roots. Dracula's headquarters is still a gloomy, broken-down castle which looks just as amazing as ever. Peter Cushing also plays a descendant of Van Helsing who happens to look exactly like him. He is just as good as always, even though he doesn't have much new material to work with. How many times do we need to hear him tell the legend of the vampire?
A vampire attacks for two basic reasons. Now, firstly, it needs human blood to nourish itself. Secondly, it will attack to curse its victim.
Unlike Christopher Lee, who hated being typecast, Peter Cushing embraced it. He plays the part serious no matter how ludicrous the subject matter may be. Hell, the movie could be about rabbits shooting lasers at robot elephants. He'd still treat it like he's trying to win an Academy Award. Bond girl and model Caroline Munro is in there, but she's only in the dancing scene, the resurrection scene, and then she's killed by Dracula. Too bad. Dracula's servant is a guy named Johnny Alucard. Every time there's a character named Alucard in one of these movies, there's always a scene where somebody's writing down the name just to show that it's Dracula spelled backwards. The same thing happened in Son of Dracula in 1943. It's also incredibly coincidental that this Alucard guy looks exactly like the guy in the beginning who collects Dracula's remains. I can understand the reason to keep Peter Cushing as both versions of Van Helsing, but does every generation in this movie have to be the same actor? It doesn't make any sense. Van Helsing reestablishes that running water can kill a vampire, and furthermore states that they can be killed by silver as well. And he uses both. He kills Alucard in a shower, and then in the final fight against Dracula, he stabs him with a silver knife. But the Count doesn't stay down for long. Van Helsing's granddaughter, under Dracula's control, pulls the knife out, and that's all it takes to bring him back. But Van Helsing has a plan B. He lures Dracula into an Indiana Jones-style booby trap full of wooden spikes. He burns his face with holy water and forces him onto the spikes with a shovel as blood spurts everywhere. This is a great ending, but you can't take it seriously with all that funk music going on. What's the deal with that? It makes sense to have that kind of music during the dancing scenes, but not during the horror scenes. It would be like watching Godzilla with polka music. It doesn't fit. The movie generally gets negative reactions, but I don't think it's that disappointing. Sure, it takes a big risk by setting it in the present time, but it carries enough of the horror goods we come to expect. We get both Lee and Cushing back together like good old times, and get two Van Helsing vs. Dracula bouts for the price of one. The beginning and ending are great, but the middle is crap. It's a shit sandwich.
I have returned to destroy you.